I met Cara because she messaged me on Instagram.
I went after. I was like.
She went after me.
I went after it.
Yeah, and because you said, I want to help the helpers, and I always remember that because that's really what you're all about, and that's why I appreciate you. Is because you're really good at. I mean, what you're doing here. You're supporting everybody. You are the glue that's holding the things together.
You haven't seen me. I am the glue.
The name tag says the glue. So she wanted to help basically get my products out there and
keep you safe.
Keep me safe. Help me go through my product listings and make sure that everything was like not a legal liability, which was really helpful.
Yeah, when you're working with supplements, what we do is really in a very gray area, and there are things that we can do to help our community stay safe while we push the boundaries and going back to the medicines that we have been working with for, how long have mushrooms been on the planet? Like 480 billion years here for us.
Yeah,
so we've been working with mushrooms since before Amanita, before any of us. I can't even go with that. So, but with supplements, there's lots of rules and regulations, and when you use certain terms and you make claims, you leave yourself open as a target for the government to come in and say, what are you doing?
Right.
What are you doing? You're not doing it right. I'm going to tell you how to do it right, or I'm going to make you stop, or it's going to be super expensive for you to do it right.
Right.
And so for those of us that can really mind our P's and Q's and work with these medicines and respect them and also give a shit about the people that we're fucking taking care of, let us figure this out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So today we're just gonna have kind of like almost like a live podcast, like conversation between us about our personal experiences with Amanita, and we're gonna be talking about the kind of like the origins, the benefits that we both have received, some of the cautions, the contraindications. We do want to leave it open for Q&A at the end. And we'll go over some identification things. So.
Yeah, and my friend Sin, she has some caps that were foraged in my area, the yellow fly agaric. We're going to be passing those around. I'm not really sure, Michael. What do you think? Should we just start passing those around for people to smell?
Yeah.
Just like hand them around, everybody get a sniff.
Yeah.
These are stinky. They're a year old. They're Argosauii. They're our yellow fly agaric.
Nice.
And we're going to talk about that later. But let's pass the mushroom.
Pass the shroom to the left.
All right.
Yes.
I feel like it's time to sit, man. I've been on my feet all fucking day.
Let's have a seat. All right. Wow.
So, do you want to, where do you want to start? Do you want to start talking about microdosing? Do you want to start talking about megadosing? What your experience coming into Amanita was? How she kind of came to you?
Yeah, I'd like to start with the origin.
Okay.
Right. So, I want to ask you though.
Oh my God! I did it to you first, so you didn't. I didn't want to be the first one.
Okay.
No, I can do
You want
this.
me? You go. All right. Cara, how did you start working with Amanita muscaria?
Okay, so it was a couple, it's been probably 3 years since she came to me. She kept showing up in multiple areas of my life in really strange and magical ways. And I was really struggling. I was suffering from COVID. I had it 3 times. I couldn't taste or smell for about 18 months. And when your taste and smell is gone, it is devastating. Man, I was so depressed. To the point where I was willing to take my own life. I made a plan. I had a suicide sale. I sent all my favorite things to my friends. So I knew that I wasn't that depressed, but I was feeling it. And Darren, Mushroom Hour podcast. Anybody ever listen to the Mushroom Hour podcast? Darren, what's Darren's last name? Do you remember? Marin or something, or he's in Marin County. Anyway, he does this talk with Amanita Dreamer, and I don't know if you guys have heard the name Amanita Dreamer. There is some controversy. I don't really know. I don't really care. the information that she gave me was extremely valid, and I feel like she was talking for the mushrooms, and it struck a chord, and it was just like that direct link to me. And I was sitting in my kitchen with my earphones on, and I'm breaking down crying, listening to this woman share her story. And I was like, man, this mushroom is like, it's medicine for me right now. I can feel it. But I was scared, you know? I was scared. There's all these stories and reports about large doses and the dissociation and people running through fields, getting all cut up, thinking they're running from wolves when they're running into traffic, you know? So like I was so scared, and I was really feeling like the reverence and the respect that I needed to pay her. I did a deep dive, and I read about her medicine, and when I started reading about that stuff, I was like, oh my God, there's all these other things, like biologically and in the chemicals. I was a drinker. I had just gotten sober in my own way, and it clicked GABA. You know, having the ability to increase GABA, but not from an extracted spirit side of like needing more and more and more alcohol to reach that feeling. Alcohol was medicine to me. And when I heard how much that it related to alcohol and Amanita and what it did on the body, it just sounded like such a more like you know, these medicines become our teachers, and we need them to help guide us, but we also need to be able to listen and open up. And Amanita gave me, just learning about her and learning about like taking some magnesium to glycinate to increase GABA, doing things, wild lettuce. I got wild lettuce from the first Myco Fest. This kid was selling wild lettuce on the side and never heard about it, and he gave it to me. And I felt so in my body, and I was so happy to be there, but I was on the search for Amanita. And I'm finding all of these other plant spirits and plant guides, and I finally found her, and it was on the equinox of like 2 years ago. I knew I was going to find her, and Vint, you're the reason I fucking went to Beaver Creek. And you remember the Primus concert that you were going to a couple years ago in Columbus? I was there. I knew I was going to find Amanita, and I changed my direction because of you, and I found her. My first experience
all
with
thanks
the
to you, man.
All thanks to you, Vin. If nobody knows,
Yeah,
of the Ohio Mushroom Festival. Love you. Okay, and then, I mean, everything kind of started to open up from there, and it got real fucking magical, and it's just been a journey. And then me and Michael met, you know.
Instagram or something?
I don't know.
Right?
I don't know. Yeah. Magic. It's the magic of Amanita. Like, she brings people together.
Right.
And you'll hear, like, I think plants and mushrooms have all these different archetypes to them. So you'll hear me say they, them, he, she. You know, it's whatever the mushroom is bringing to me. And their personality is kind of how I talk about them. So you'll hear me, you too, probably.
Yeah, I feel like Amanita has a very feminine spirit to me. Yeah, very maternal. Also, actually, similar to ayahuasca in the way where it's like, it's just, this is how it is. And if you can't deal with that, then you can have your fit about it. But, you know, she just lays it down, you know. And
she's no bullshit.
Yeah,
you know?
The only thing that gets in the way is the ego.
Yeah.
So,
and she can help you with that.
She definitely can.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's a real, for me, and we were really excited about doing this presentation. We both really wanted to do this presentation.
Yeah.
And it worked out that we could do this together because we really wanted to share like the feminine and masculine sides of how we have been working with this medicine, because it's important to highlight all of that.
Absolutely.
I find it to be very masculine in the sense that it taps me into my primal instincts and shuts my brain down and gets me into the body so that I feel safe in my body so that I can focus on, and I'm not trying to be productive. I don't want to put this energy towards, working for somebody else. That energy I have, it goes towards doing something for myself, being able to forage with a clear mind while looking for other plants and mushrooms. I use it to help right me and get me calm so that I can have more magical moments in my life. So Michael on the other side, and I microdose. I've not taken I've not taken a large dose. I don't feel that I've never found somebody, that's giving up a lot of control, and I have a lot of control issues.
Yeah, I do too, and that's why like the higher doses that I've had have been challenging.
Yeah.
But I could maybe back up and tell a little bit more of my origin story.
Sorry.
So as I said, I was a heavy cannabis user, and since I was like a teenager, it just wasn't really the best thing for me. I'd have anxiety and chronic depression because I was abusing the plant. Like I didn't need to use it as much, and I was kind of always chasing that high and always smoking. And I had a party at my house, and I was just smoking all night. I wasn't being a good host, and this guy was kind of being an energy vampire, and I wasn't able to like lay down the law. And I was just so like complacent because I was just super high. And this person brought up, "Hey, have you ever microdosed Amanita muscaria?" And I was like, "Why would I do that? It's like the poisonous mushroom, it's psychedelic and poisonous. Like, okay, why would I do that?" And so she didn't really say much, but I knew I needed to quit smoking that day. And then within the next 2-3 weeks, synchronistically, 2 other people came up to me and said, I had a high dose of Amanita muscaria. And I was like, okay, well, you're not dead. All right, so like what happened? They're like, well, not much happened during the experience, but I have 2 weeks later this lasting sense of peace. And muscimol, being a GABA agonist, it's reducing anxiety, and it does accumulate in your body, so it can have these long-lasting effects. And so I started to research it. I also found Amanita Dreamer, and I bought my own caps and started making little microdose ice cubes. And I would pop a little ice cube every day, and I noticed that it really helped me with that weaning process from the cannabis. It took me about 3 months to realize like this is not my path anymore, and it was a hard thing for me to do, but ultimately it was really good because it allowed me to step into my power, step into my voice. My personal life and my business life just flourished after that, and I started working with Amanita personally, and then made tinctures, and that just became my business. Like I started selling it, and then I just quit my other jobs, and I haven't looked back. And I started to meet all these people like you and other clients and like just practitioners that I work with. So I get referred to people from doctors and therapists, and like I realize that I am serving these mushrooms, like I'm serving them, and I'm just like a servant, and so I'm happy to like talk about the mushrooms, and like I'm really trying to do them justice, especially with Amanita muscaria being such a mushroom that's shrouded in mythology and misinformation. It's really important for harm reduction and also for just the spirit of the mushroom and what it can offer people to really try to get the best information out there. And one of the best ways to distill that information is through story.
Yeah.
And that's why we're having this conversation between us, because we could rattle off all sorts of facts to you guys, and it might be entertaining, it might be kind of boring, but you will remember a story because it's relatable. And so, that was my experience with working with Amanita, and some of the benefits I got. I don't really talk a whole lot about the spiritual aspects of it, but right away I noticed that my intuition was increasing. Like I was also having this little twitch on my third eye. It was like if I had a choice point of like left or right, it'd be like ding, 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 and I would take that choice, and it would result in a good result. Or I could predict things or something like that. But on a physiological level, it helped me have less anxiety, it helped me sleep better. I was having really lucid and vivid dreams. It lifted the lifelong depression I've had. And yeah, it's not perfect, but it's a medicine that like, I can take this medicine like 5 days a week all the time. And it just is so good for me, and I've found that it's really good for other people, and it wasn't on the list of options for a while for this culture.
And for me, I can take it very sporadically. Sometimes I work with it more than I do.
Yeah.
Sometimes I use it like, as needed, and it works just that well for me. I was at the Detroit Psychedelic Society, Women's and Entheogens, Bubba Kalindi, Mama I Wendy, she was, I'll pass over that, but it was an amazing experience. And there was a woman from California that had been working with Amanita. She did a sacred ceremony, and I got there too late, and I wasn't able to drink from the cup, but I was drinking from my cup, and my relationship was working with Amanita, and I could feel their resonance as everybody else was. And so you don't even have to, once you build relationship with her, for me anyway, once I've worked with her, like I can kind of call in, I can call her in at any time.
Yeah.
But that's me. I don't know if you feel like that too.
I definitely agree with that, yeah. Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's a frequency, it's a spirit. Like, we're tapping into that energy. And it's funny because a lot of people will have the synchronicity with Amanita. Like, I'll have people, they'll find me, but they'll have like a dream about this mushroom, and they never have like looked at the mushroom, or maybe it's in the subconscious, but then like the next day they'll like find my website, or they'll find me on Instagram, or they'll go walk through the woods and they'll find an Amanita, and they're like, okay, this is like really speaking to me, and like, what's this medicine about? And I think now more than ever, Amanita muscaria is so beneficial because it helps to reduce the symptoms of trauma and PTSD. And we are living in a very traumatic time right now, like with COVID and the separation, like all the things that are happening in this culture. I think this is really like a new plant ally or fungal ally that's really being ushered in.
For right now. I work in the healthcare industry for the past 27 years as a respiratory therapist, and COVID was, for me, in my experience, it was extremely rough. But Amanita was coming into my life at that time, and what I was learning from her and the way that COVID had impacted the parasympathetic nervous system, it triggers and inflames the vagus nerve. So that triggers and inflames our anxieties, our fears, and we were being puppeted extremely. We were being separated more by fear and fear and fear, and every day there was something different that was being said. And she helped me to just stay real adaptable to move through that crisis. And the stuff that I was learning about Amanita was shit that I was informing our medical team on, and we were treating patients with things that acted like Amanita, and we were finding success when we weren't finding success with other things. And it was an eye-opener for me. And so I didn't mean to hijack that, but I just she helps us to relax from our trauma and our fear and our anxiety.
Yeah. And just like touching on that, like I was just sharing with some people at my booth that like the whole thing with PTSD is that you have something that happened. It could be yesterday, it could be when you're 6 years old, but to the mind, time does not exist. Everything is just all right here, right now. So if you watch something, if you hear something, if you experience something, if you remember something, to the mind and the chemical processes that are happening, it's all the same. So that thing that happened to you when you're 6 years old is really happening right now whenever you have something that triggers that in the present moment. And so there's a cascade of effects. We have, dumping cortisol, we get into the fight or flight response, right? And then that fight or flight response is basically telling the body, this isn't safe. And we need to like stay safe, right? Because it's all about survival.
Or move.
Right, or move.
Stay safe.
Fight, flight, freeze. Yeah. So with muscimol being a GABA agonist and helping to suppress that fight or flight response in the body, it gives us an opportunity to kind of breathe into that experience of remembering the trauma, but our emotions and our physiological stuff, that's over there. I'm right here. I'm the observer witnessing that. And I can actually, you can work through and rewire those traumatic neural pathways and step onto a new timeline where you're not that traumatized person anymore, which is astounding that we actually have something like that available. And that's one of the main reasons I love Amanita, because it can touch on things in different areas that other psychedelics maybe not as easily. And you know, it's not the medicine for everybody, but for the people it's for, it's like really for.
Yeah.
You know, I'll have people that are like, I wanted to microdose mushrooms, but psilocybin kind of makes me like agitated, jittery,
Yeah.
or like it's a little too over sensory. You know, and muscimol and Amanita being this like chill out, like, you know, calm down, like it's really anti-anxiety.
And I know this really, I say this a lot, and it's simple, but it's not that simple. But I like to think about, because I do work with psilocybin too, and Tyler. God damn it, I'm like gonna get your name.
All three. He's all three.
Tyler.
That's Tyler.
Look, he's going to come and talk about psilocybin later, so you can talk about that and maybe even share some differences, but it's his story. But for me, psilocybin in the brain feels very heady, and Amanita feels very body.
Yeah.
So I feel like sometimes, like, I didn't understand this for me. When my anxiety is ticking away and going on, it's not really happening in my brain, but that's where I'm witnessing it. If I'm not feeling safe in my body, so my mind is like really in a panic mode. And so if I can find things to help me get in my body, then my mind chatter drops, and then I can focus and I can be more present, because I feel blocked. You know, I'm on a journey to. You know, to get that all the time. I'm not there yet. We had a really good conversation this morning. That was really helpful. Yeah.
So yeah, what has your experience been with Amanita thus far? Like, what kind of doses are you taking, and how often are you taking it, and what's your experience been?
Okay. So I like to work with, you know what, I like to work with all of them. I have Michael's Pantherina. Pantherina is the darker brown, like a darker brown, tanner brown. It has a little bit more muscimol, it's more potent. More potent.
Yeah.
Amanita, Muscaria of the red. I like working with her. But for some reason, you know, I like working with things that are closest to me. So, you know, the Gasawi I have a connection to. I love the yellow. I love the beauty of when I made the tincture, the light cascading through the yellow. I mean, it was like sunshine to me. It was beautiful, just connecting with the medicine by making it and being able to view it, you know, from a different perspective. So I like working with the Gasawi I think for me, Gasawi and when I'm describing it to other people, the red flag air, I do similar dosing. I feel like they do the same thing, but the yellow one is a little bit more nuanced to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'll do like maybe.
Closer to home.
It is. It feels that way. So I'll probably sometimes, like I've done up to 1 gram, but I'm small, like maybe 250 to 500 on the Pantherina, and my doses for the Gasawi are probably like 100 to like sometimes 500 milligrams, and that feels like right to me.
Yeah.
But I've been working with medicines for a long time, and I do intuitive dosing, and that can be a
Under concentrate or of a dry fruiting body that you're speaking of?
There was a question of what am I working with Is it a concentrate or is it from a dry fruiting body? So I made a tea. I dehydrated my caps and then I made a tea, boiled out the rest of the medicine a couple times. I added like the stabilizer in and made a tincture so that, because there's a lot of fats. And
lipids,
yeah, there's a lot of lipids, and you kind of need something to stabilize it. So I use glycerin, and that I'm working with a tincture like made into a tea, and then alcohol added, like another alcohol extraction. That's what.
So when you say 250, that's of
Yeah, so 15.
of tea.
Yeah, and I'm taking like 15, like an extract, like a tea, but put into a tincture form and extract like fluid in with alcohol. But I'm looking at the dosages, like it's like 100 milligrams of the weight of the cap. That's what I'm referencing.
Like the dry weight equivalent in an extracted form.
Yeah. So maybe you want to talk about that, how the.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what
Like so when we're looking at the weights of the dried caps of the mushrooms.
Right.
That's what we're looking at in terms of dosing. And so
Yeah.
when I'm talking about 100 milligrams or a gram, I'm talking about a gram of the dried weight of mushroom.
Right.
That's
Rather
what I'm
than
referencing.
like the actual weight of the liquid, or we're not talking about like a concentrated muscimol. This muscimol, like an active like dose of that is like 1 to 20 milligrams. It's like the concentrated muscimol. So yeah. So
I don't know, did that answer your question?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, just as far as like what in general like people are considering as a dose. What's is your standard to dry fruit, which you said yes it is. And then,
I mean, so like whenever I make the tinctures and they're fully decarbed, and I think that they're more bioavailable than eating the dry cap. People do microdose just dry caps, or like they'll put the powder into capsules and do it that way. But it's not fully decarbed is one thing, which that's up to user preference. But the tincture is more bioavailable because it's just like a liquid extract. It's you don't have to break down the body of it, right? And so I've found that people typically are microdosing like somewhere between usually 100 milligrams to like 500 milligrams, and then there are some people who microdose like up to 3 grams that have like a higher threshold, and also microdosing is like subjective,
Right.
Some people are like, I want to feel a little bit, and I'm like, well, that's not a microdose, but you're having a good time. Okay, cool. That works for
Sometimes
you.
feeling it is your medicine.
Yeah.
I don't discount that.
It's supposed to be sub-perceptual. That's what a true microdose is, but
Yeah, that's how I look at it. It's like this is a microdose, this is your lowest therapeutic dose, and
Right.
this is a high dose.
Right.
So should we talk about
Yeah, talk about that,
Yes.
the threshold
Okay.
dose, and
Yeah.
So I mean, so like what I tell people is like a microdose could be like 50 milligrams to like 3,000 milligrams, or like 3 grams, and a threshold dose could be like 2 grams to like 15 grams. It just depends on like how old the mushrooms are, how potent they are, because Amanita muscaria can vary in potency like tenfold. You could have one mushroom growing side by side that could be 10 times stronger or weaker. That's why it's important whenever you're preparing to like do large homogeneous batches. So you do like, I do like 3 pounds at a time when I'm making extracts. But like, anything over like 15 to 30 to 60 grams, like get more of it, because you could nibble on one cap one day and another cap the other day and have 2 different experiences. So we want to like try to remove as many variables, or just go fully in your intuition, and that's what you do. But then the hero doses, like they don't really even start until 15 grams, and normally it's like 30, 40, 50, 60 grams, which is a lot of biomass.
Right, how much is that in a tincture form?
Well, I mean, like the highest strength tincture I have is like 15 grams in the bottle.
So that would be like a full bottle.
That'd be like a full bottle or 2. That's why whenever people are asking me about that, I'm like, you should just buy caps at that point.
Eat the caps.
You just get the caps and make your own tea.
So you wouldn't recommend it as something that's functional for a high dose.
No, value to just buy the caps, So, but I think that like, I've done a couple hero doses. I've also eaten raw Amanitas, and I think really like the magic is in the microdose. Okay, yeah. So that's my recommendation is starting with microdosing and doing that for a while. Develop a relationship with the spirit and of Amanita, and go as you feel led. But the hero doses are difficult.
I know that's
really
and
difficult.
that's really hard for people to hear. Go as you're led. But when you are tapping in and you're working with plants and mushrooms more, they tell you. They'll wean you off. They're not an exhaustive resource, and especially with Amanita, you can't cultivate them. They grow. They're mycorrhizal. They have to have relationships with specific other beings to be able to fruit, and they are around the same time of year, right around now is the fall equinoxes when we usually find them, but we've been finding them recently because, I don't know, it's climate change, things are changing.
Yeah.
They're fruiting at different periods of time, and we're noticing that. But what and you could probably speak to this even more, that medicine, they're not like psilocybin. They don't store as well. So the dried caps lose their potency pretty, what do you think, 6 months?
It's like, I've seen some charts that say like it's best to refrigerate them or freeze them for like long-term storage. But
long-term storage is
right.
What with them?
I like to use up Amanitas within like a year and a half. Like other mushrooms, like I do like 2 years max. But like airtight, like desiccant glass jars, like store them in a cool, dark place.
So there's not a lot of them. They need specific conditions to grow. When you find them and you have a flush, there's something going on. They're telling you, that it's the right time to use their medicine. But they don't store for forever. So it's like medicine of place and time of place to use the medicine. We're going we're on the equinox and we're going into the dark. And even though we have fall to get through and the beautiful weather, that's our period of time when we start like shutting down, reflecting, going back in, and some of those fucking things pop up and smack you in the face. And it's the perfect time to be able to transition into the winter way more comfortably and easily. Do you feel that way too?
I do. I also feel like I do feel like it's a medicine that's accessible like year round, and I use it year round. But I feel like that subconscious surgery that's happening with Amanita, where it's like doing the deep work and like the subconscious, that's typically more in tune with like a winter time, like the winter solstice, the darkest day of the year, which is like when, Santa Claus or the Siberian shamans were passing out, or the Sami shamans were passing out Amanitas, which is kind of where some of the mythology around Santa Claus comes from. We have these Christmas trees, pine trees, mycorrhizal relationship with these red and white gifts under the trees, collected by these shamans that would carry them on their sack,
and they were there to dry out. They were around the tree to dry.
Right. Sometimes
they were
hang
drying
them on
around the
trees.
fire.
Yeah. And like the mythology around that is that there is the snow would burrow in the doorway, so you couldn't go through the doorway, so you'd have to climb on the roof and go into the smoke hole. And there's a lot of theories, and it's kind of interesting when you look into all of it. And but the whole idea was that this shaman would come in and give people these red and white gifts, these little mushrooms, and they would either give them to that person, or the person would ask them for guidance or help, like a shaman, and the shaman would take them or guide them in taking them and go to the spirit world and bring back truth and give them like gifts, So it's kind of where some of that mythology comes in.
And I hate to kind of leave it there, but I think we'd like to do some like closing. I would like to give you a little bit of time for question and answers.
Yeah.
To get our next presenter on.
Right, I forgot. Yeah, we have 45 minutes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what is it that you want to like quickly, close with? Do we want to talk about local ID, or you guys can, or they can come and talk to us later? Or?
Yeah. I'm feeling that like, it's really important to, this mushroom helps us, and all the plant allies do, the mushroom allies do, is really like tapping into what's going on with you. What's going on with you in your life right now? What do you need? And it's something that kind of differs from other psychedelics where a lot of, like psilocybin or LSD, it's about like connecting with like community and like the astral realms and like other beings potentially, whereas Amanita is like really about like what's happening inside of you. Why do you have this trauma, and like how do we fix that? Like what's going on there? And that's important medicine for me. And I think that other people might agree with that in some ways.
Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking about how I wanted to end this.
Yeah.
So I can't answer that.
What are your closing statements?
What I want to say.
Too quick, right?
It is too quick. Yeah.
We need another 2 hours.
Yeah, yeah, time. To introduce myself to this mushroom, for it to have been introduced to me, or it introduced itself to me, it's taught me a lot about reverence, discernment, slowing down, building relationships. It's not a mushroom that you just want to jump in and start working with. They're wonderful and beautiful to admire, but I would ask if you're not really, once you pluck a mushroom, they're fine, you're not going to hurt anything, but I would invite you to, when you're in the presence of these mushrooms, just sit with them, and try to find a place of quiet and, see if anything comes through, see if they want to say anything to you, what happened, what's going on in that moment. Build a relationship. They help me to build a relationship, and I have respect. I have respect for their poison. I have respect for their medicine. And it has really slowed my process in getting to know plants and mushrooms and allowing me to build deeper relationships. And I'll probably leave it there.
Yeah. It's a slow burn relationship.
Yeah, I'm digging it. Yeah.
I've never worked with something so slowly in my life.
Yeah.
And just spent so much time discovering the nuances.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's all about like novelty, like skipping along the surface, but like there's so much in the plant and mushroom world that is so deep and nuanced.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that Amanita taught me is like slow down.
Yeah.
Slow down, take a breath. Yeah.
So I think that's perfect. We're gonna end that.
So we got time for Q&A.
Yeah, we have time for Q&A.
All right. We got 15 minutes.
When you need to set your stuff up, we're just gonna, if you need to come and set yourself up whenever, we'll just roll into you taking off at 6, okay? Okay.
I can see the speaker. Is that over there hanging out?
Yeah, we'll get it over for you. Okay.
Your question?
I'm a complete novice, so maybe you could, my understanding was that Amanita is poisonous, but it's also clearly medicinal, so can you rectify that for me, how does that?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you,
Whenever Amanita is in its raw state, when you pick it, it has high concentrations of ibotenic acid. And ibotenic acid stimulates glutamate in the brain, and it can also produce negative side effects if you consume a lot of it. They also contain muscimol in their raw state, but there's higher concentrations of ibotenic acid. Whenever you dehydrate it, whenever you boil it, whenever you change the pH, you're converting that ibotenic acid into muscimol just through decarboxylation, similar to like cannabis preparation. So that's how you can remove or convert the ibotenic acid to muscimol. And muscimol is a GABA agonist, so it has more therapeutic properties. High doses of ibotenic acid can result in nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, seizures, convulsions, sweating.
Well, I mean, ibotenic acid is what is in the top of the cap of the mushroom. That's why it's called fly gear, because they would watch the flies going into the liquid, and they would.
They die.
They
yeah.
died.
Yeah. Yeah, and I ate a raw Amanita for science. Did it for science, and it was a wild experience, and I would not recommend it. But if I were in the woods picking mushrooms, I would nibble a little bit of it because it's energizing, it's stimulating. It's stimulating glutamate in the body, and so it kind of has this speedy feeling, and also it can give you like physical strength and energy. I sell a partially decarbed tincture, and I take that before I work out, and I can do more. So
the process of like drying or dehydrating or making the tinctures kind of changes.
Yeah, you're like moving.
The poison is the toxic quality more towards the medicinal quality.
Yep, exactly.
And you can boil off all of that poison and eat the mushroom. If you parboil it twice, you would think boiling mushrooms, they would be really gross and nasty. They are so meaty and delicious, and you can fry them in some butter.
So good.
They're so good. They are so good. So you can eat them.
Yeah.
But I mean, you just know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You parboil them first, dump the water off if it's your first time. Make sure you know what you have. Make sure you know that you have that species.
Right.
I'm not sure.
We had a Thanksgiving party like 3 years ago, and there was Amanitas growing in the backyard, the Gasawii. And everybody's like, Michael, come on, you're the Amanita dude, like let's do this. And I'm like, we don't have lemon juice, these aren't dehydrated, like we don't have citric acid, we don't even have pH meters.
Yeah,
And
it's
I'm
not
like,
a party. Is
I'm like, guys, like this is, they're like, they wanted it, so we took these fresh mushrooms and we boiled the shit out of them for like 40 minutes. And I was like, guys, I'll take it first, but like, trust me, this is not gonna be like all muscimol. And it tasted like chicken noodle soup. It was so good, but like most of us had great experience, but 2 people had seizures, and I was like, I told you, like, this is not. And the people that had the seizures actually had like an 1/8 of the dose, and I had like 4 times the dose, and I had a great time. And other people who had not experienced it at all before also had a good time, but these 2 people. I think if you're prone to seizures, if you have like a weaker constitution, then you should not be doing that.
I also think that's a caution. We wanted to talk about caution,
I know,
but we never got there.
Yeah.
What I'm finding personally is like if you have thyroid issues and you're on thyroid medication, I would just do a little bit more deep diving. I found that as a caution.
Don't consume it with alcohol.
Don't consume it with alcohol.
Yeah, like microdosing with the tincture, that's different. But like high doses of alcohol, yeah.
And one other thing, like, if you're on high doses of any medication, if you have severe symptoms of whatever condition that you are, this is not a mushroom that you want to mess with. And I say that about psilocybin too. If you're on a lot of medication, you're having a lot of severe side effects or symptoms, not the medicine to be working with. I would exclude it. But did you have a question?
Obviously, it's pretty anecdotal. This guy struggles with chronic pain, and I was curious what would be a good functional dosage for actually being able to still maintain being able to physically do work, whereas like not going too far. Obviously, you can feel nothing, but like you also want to be functional.
Topicals.
That's
exactly.
topicals. Talk about topicals.
Talking about topicals, man. Yeah, exactly. So you can use Amanita tincture or an oil infusion or a salve topically for localized pain relief. So muscimol is an anti-inflammatory as well. So if you can consume it, it'll do systemic reduction of inflammation. But if you have a specific area that you need help with, nerve pain, muscle pain, joint pain, arthritis, like you can apply the tincture or the oil infusion topically, and it's non-psychoactive.
Now internally, you said 15 grams was roughly about a heroic dose.
It can start around there.
What about 9 grams? Obviously, that's not a microdose by any means.
I
You
would
still
not be
feel it.
operating a vehicle or going to work on 9 grams. Yeah, that'd be more about like, I'm like, it's me time. Like, I'm gonna go take a bath and like chill, you know? You don't really want to be like going about your day with that. I would say that like 3 grams at most is what people usually are doing. Yeah.
How do you find a safe way to get started if you're not a forger?
So if you want to talk to me afterwards, there's a Facebook group I'm an admin in, and we have the biggest Amanita group in the world. We have great resources. We have a beginner's guide. We have group experts in there, and we have an approved vendors list. So there's a bunch of international vendors. They pay us to be approved, and us and the admins, we approve of them. There's a lot of really bad products out there as well, which I'll just touch on. Like, do not buy Amanita stuff in smoke shops. Most of it's garbage, and I've personally worked with some of them, and I can get into that.
Buy
a lot,
it
but we're not.
from somebody you know.
Yeah.
And if it has a source to it, because it's something, you need to have some knowledge to be working with this.
Right.
Join the Facebook group though.
Join the
It's a
Facebook group.
Wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
Really.
Does anybody still need to smell the Amanita? Has anyone not smelled it?
I was just gonna say Amanita Muscaria Science and Magic group on Facebook. Yeah.
I have a question.
Well, hold on.
Hold on a second.
I'll get right to you. So, we're in the precipice of like some of these things being taken away and some of these things being entered back into our existence as allowed. Amanita is listed as a poison under the FDA. It's not consumable for human consumption. It's not legal for human consumption. So it's up to us and how we work with it and keep our safe use safe and our friends and our community safe use safe. Sharing information and guiding each other to keep each other safe because they're looking for every reason to take this mushroom away from us.
Yeah.
And we're probably talking about this now, and they're in the works of taking this away from us.
Well, the FDA is looking into these bad players that have Amanita products with nutritional facts because it's not approved for food consumption. So, but for them, it's a lot of CBD companies that are just in this for money. And so they don't care what happens to the culture and the accessibility around Amanita. So it's basically up to us to do our due diligence, to use it safely, and to not support the bad products that will enforce regulation. Because if you're putting other drugs in them and people are having like adverse side effects and they go to a hospital, then they're going to crack down on it, just like they did with salvia.
Who knows what you're reacting to? So it's a mushroom, I think, that should be shared within community, should be shared by trusted people. These were mushrooms that shamans worked with because the way in which they worked with these mushrooms was informed by the mushrooms and the people that were working most closely with them. And they had that information passed on them and how to process them and use them safely and what their medicine is like. Yeah.
We have one more
Oh,
question?
yes, we got one more question. Yeah.
So you mentioned in the beginning that you thought, you were smoking too much pot and you didn't like it, so you're switching to this.
Yeah.
But aren't you giving up one thing for the other?
Right?
And what are you, is your plan to stop doing it because you're going to get to a certain point? Or are you
So,
just switching from one drug to another?
Right. It's a great question, and the reason why I've checked in with myself a lot about this because it's like I'm just like switching from one to the other, but I don't have the negative side effects that I had with cannabis and like the dependency, like the mental addiction part of it. So with Amanita, it actually has this kind of like built-in resistance thing where.
When you're done, I need your help.
Yeah. This almost it accumulates in your system, and you might go through periods of time, long periods of time. Like I've gone months without taking it, and then I'll realize, I'm a little uptight right now. Maybe I'll start taking Amanita again. And for me, it's cool because it's not like masking my symptoms like I was using cannabis to like just feel good. Like I just want to feel good, and I want to think about that. with Amanita, it actually helps me separate from my emotions and issues and see them clearly and objectively. And I didn't, it's non-habit for me too, which is pretty cool. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question.
I need a tall guy. The TV has been so, no. I can't get it. It's up there. I need tall.
Do you mean to like
It's behind the sign.
Yeah.
hit the power button?
Yes. Wait, we're not done yet.
All right.
I need to figure out how to switch it.
Input.
We were using wireless.
Search settings.
Do you?
So what's going on is we have to apply the input. So it's going to be an HDMI.
We just forget. He's got a Mac. I've not worked with Macs before. When you get the sticky,
Yeah.